Hey guys, Sam here. I finally got a mic so I no longer sound like that other kid in your Call of Duty lobby. Anyways, today I'll be teaching you guys how to map SVs in Mania, but before this video starts, you need to already know how to use the OSU editor in order to understand this tutorial. Other than that, I will also only be teaching you actual normal SVs. I will not be teaching you how to map BPM SVs because I feel like this is a tutorial for beginners. And beginners should never touch BPM SVs. There's a lot of problems that comes with it and it's unrankable. Another thing is also in this video I will only be teaching you how to make your SV mapping process way more smoother, way more convenient. I will be not teaching you how to, actually make a good SV map. I will not be doing that. However, if you guys are interested, I can make a video in the future covering that. For the majority of this video, I will be teaching you how to use an SV program, which I will get into in a moment. But by the end of the video, I will also leave a few extra SV mapping tips that can definitely help your SV mapping process. So if you want to, you can just watch till the end to find out, or you can just skip around using the bookmarks that I've provided. Anyways, let's get into the SV program that I will be teaching you how to use today. This is Reamber by Evening. This is the GitHub release page for Reamber, which I will link in the video description. Once you're here, you should see the latest release at the top. If you want to, you can download some of the oldest releases, but I don't know why you will do that. So you just click on the latest release, click on the RAR file, save it, extract the RAR file to whatever folder you want. I will not do that because I already have it downloaded. Once you have extracted a RAR file, you should be met with this folder. You just click on the Reamber application and it should be open. Now that the program is open, you'll realize that there are multiple tabs on the top. I'll be covering all of these tabs. Well, this is not really a tab, except for Alter, because I don't use it and I don't want to teach you guys something that I'm not familiar with. I also think most of the features in the Alter tab, it can be done natively inside the OSU editor, so I'll just not teach you guys how to use Alter. But the first step that I will be teaching you is the Stutter tab. So we'll just click on the Stutter tab and this should be what you will see. As I've said earlier, this tutorial will not cover BPM SVs, so this part will just be ignored. Just pretend this doesn't exist, and this as well. So we'll be looking at this and this part of the tab. So before I explain what each of those panels do, I need to tell you what the Stutter tab actually does first. The main thing that the Stutter tab can do is two SV effects, which is bump and inverse bump. For a bump, it will be a speed up SV followed by a slow down SV and maybe another SV at the end to return the scroll speed back to normal. For an inverse bump, it's the opposite, so it's a slow down SV followed by a speed up SV and then another SV at the end to return the scroll speed back to normal. With all of that in mind, let's get into what these panels do. First thing you need to make sure of is this type panel. You need to make sure it's on SV mode, not BPM mode, because we'll only be doing SV for this video. And now we'll go into the initial SV slider. This will determine your first SV out of the 3 SV points that a starter effect will have. For example, if you want a bump, which is a speed up followed by a slowdown, you will make it a speed up SV first. But if you want to make this an inverse bump, where it's slow down first and then speed up, you make this a slow down SV, and then the threshold determines when the second SV point is relative to the start and end of the effect. So if I make this 0.25, it should be a quarter of the way from the first SV point to the final SV point. And you might be wondering, what does the threshold actually do? Why do you ever need to change this? Isn't 0.5 perfect? Well, as you can see, the initial SV, you'll be able to go up higher when the threshold is lower, and when the threshold is higher, the initial SV will be lower. What this means is that normally if you're making a bump, which is a speed up first and then a slowdown, you'll want to make the threshold lower, which is closer to the first SV point. That way you'll have a larger range for your initial SV to go. You can go up higher, you can go up faster. And for an inverse bump, I'll recommend you going 0.75. For an inverse bump, it's a slowdown first, followed by a speed up. So Normally you would just lower this. I'd like to lower it to 0.5 maybe. Experiment around if you're not sure what I'm talking about. Experimenting around always makes understanding this way easier. Next, we move on to the average SV panel. This will determine what the average SV of your starter effect is. The reason why starter effects are readable is because after all of the effects, after the notes start, stop, it still takes the same amount of time that it takes from the top of your screen to reach the bottom of your screen. So in the end, your scroll speed is never affected. It's just that the notes stop and then speed up, or speed up and then stop. And in the end, they normalize into the average SV that you set here. Normally, if you want your starter effect to be readable, you would want the average SV to be 1.0 because that will be whatever the player's default scroll speed is. But if maybe you want a starter effect during a part of your map where it's speeding up, then you can change this, or maybe a starter effect during a slow jam section, which is a slowdown section, you can lower this. And next we'll go into the settings tab, which will only have skip last point. What the skip last point does is that the program will no longer generate the third SV point, which returns the scroll speed back to normal after the startering effect. Normally you will keep this on unless maybe you will have 5 starter effects in a row, and maybe every single effect is on different intensities or different speed, or maybe one is an inverse bump, one is a bump, and all of them are stacked together, and you don't want to, remove the last point every time you add an SV. So normally you will just keep this unchecked, and once you get more familiar with the starter effect, you should know what it does. Experiment around on your own. Once you have done all that, it's time to use the input and output section. So the first thing you need to do is open up your OSU editor, and then what you need to do is select the start point and the end point of your SV starter effect. For this demonstration, I will be using these two quads. It doesn't matter if you select the whole quad or maybe just the sides. It doesn't matter how many nodes you choose horizontally, it will mean the same. But the amount of nodes that you choose horizontally matters. So for example, if I choose it like this right now, it will be one SV effect that starts here and then ends here. But if I have this node in between, it means that this will be one SV effect and then another SV effect. And this is where the final SV point will be at, where it returns back to the normal scroll speed. So when you choose your timing points, you need to make sure that you choose the start point and the end point of your SV starter effect properly. So for this demonstration, I will just select these two. Once you have copied your start and end point for your starter effect, you open up your Reamber program, and then you paste it into the output section. Once your start and end point is in the input section, you set your initial SV threshold to whatever you want. This is my favorite preset for a bump, so I will just go with this one, initial SV 2.5 and threshold 0.25, and then afterwards you just click on generate. It should have these numbers here. Once you have gotten the output, you select all of them, or Control A, Control C, go back to your editor. Before you do anything, remember to always save your map first, and then open .osu on Notepad, find timing points. It doesn't matter where you paste it within the timing points section. You can paste it on the top, you can paste it at the bottom, it doesn't matter, it all works the same. You can even paste it in the middle if you want to. Once you have pasted it, Ctrl S to save the .osu file, close it, exit from your map, and then go back in. After all of that, you'll notice that there are green lines here and green lines here. Ignore these are just what I did for my B-roll footage. It's not what I did with the program. And once you have seen this, just preview the map. And there's the effect. And notice how it returns back to the normal speed after the effect is over. And that's how you do a normal one bump effect. If you want to do, let's say, the fancy jump thrills that a lot of ranked maps do, so maybe it's a jump thrill and then you want the jump thrill to starter every single jump, you just select the whole thing, because in between each of these will be one starter. So you just Control C, go here, paste it, again set your initial SV threshold, all of that. I'm just gonna use the same one. Click generate, Control C, go back in. Always remember to save the file before you open .osu, and then paste it in timing points. Control S to save the .osu file, close it, exit the map, go back to your difficulty, go back to your map, and then it should be there. So now I'm gonna click preview. And as you can see, there's that fancy jump shield effect that a lot of ranked SV maps do. So that's how you do multiple effects across, you know, a certain pattern. So you can even make this a jump stream and then every single note it stutters. You can do that. It's up to your imagination. Make sure you get SV effects perfect for your mapping style, and that's all for the stutter effect. Alright, now that you have learned how to use the stutter tab, let's move on to the next tab, which is Copier. As the name suggests, this tab copies your SVs. The Copier tab is super useful when you're doing an SV map, and I'll show you why. For example, I have this hand stream pattern, and maybe I want a stutter for every single hand here. Every single one of these hands, I want it to stutter. Does that mean that I need to, you know, do this, Control C, go to the stutter, and then paste this for every single hand? No. All you need to do is actually just do it once, and then you can use the Copier tab to do all of the work for you. So this is how you use the Copier tab. First of all, make sure the keys are set to the correct key count. So whatever map your key count is, for my case it's 4 keys, so I'll just put it on default, which is 4K. And then you'll need to have a standard stutter effect. So for example, I have this hand stream pattern that I want a stutter every single hand. So I will just select the first hand first, Control C, and then paste it into the stutter. This way I can generate the first stutter effect. Now that the first stutter effect is here, I can go Control C and then put it into Copier. What the Copier does is that it copies all of these 3 SV points into whatever timing point that you put here. And now that you have pasted it here, you go back here, and since we haven't pasted this first hand first, we also need to include this first hand. So what we do is select this hand, this hand, this, and these are all of the hands in my hand stream pattern that I want to have a stutter on. Control C, and then paste it to input the copy to click generate. Control C again, like the starter tab. Go back. Remember to always save your file first. Open .osu. Go to the timing points. Control V, Control S to save the .osu file. Close it. Exit. Go back to your difficulty. Go back to the patterns, and it should be there now. See that? So that's how you use the Copier. It's a pretty simple tool to use, and it's very useful. Now that we're done with the Copier tab, let's move on to TPB, or 2-point Bezier. First thing I will say before I teach you guys how to use the TPB tab, I will not be using the anchor Bezier point. I'll not be doing this. It's a bit more advanced. I'm not gonna teach you guys how to do that. For this TPB tab, I will only be teaching you the simplest things that it can do, which is the speed up and slow down effect. And this tab is very useful for maybe you want a slow jam section to slowly speed up, or maybe you want the song to slowly slow down at the end because the song is calming down. First thing that you need to make sure of, like the starter tab, make sure it's on SV because we're only doing SV here. And I'll get into this parameter panel. As you can see, there's the start anchor and the end anchor. What this means is the start anchor will be the start of your speed up effect, and the end anchor will be the end of your speed up effect. So for example, I want a speed up, so maybe I will go from normal speed to maybe 2 times speed, something like that. Or maybe I want a slowdown effect, so I'll go from 1.0 speed to maybe 0.75, and that will be a slowdown effect. As for the offsets, ignore these. Offsets will be where the start point is and the end point is, which you will paste it on your own later, which I will get into with the input section. Another thing that you might want to know is that there's the average counter here, so you can know the average of your speed up effect. So maybe you want a speed up effect that normalizes to 1.0 in the end. Normally I'll go for this. As you can see, the average will be close to 1.0, so maybe you can use this effect for 2 nodes, and then you'll speed up and then slow down, and then in the end it will be equalized to 1.0 speed. You can use that as an effect if you want. Normally I would just use this as a normal speed up or a normal slowdown. And then afterwards, we'll need to look at the Bezier steps. What the Bezier steps does is that it determines how many SV points there is from the beginning of your speed up or slowdown effect to the end of your speed up and slowdown effect. So the higher this number is, the more smoother the transition is. Normally, if you are mapping a ranked map maybe, or maybe you have OCD, you want your SV points to be more organized, I will keep this to whatever amount of 1/16 snaps there is. So for example, I want the SV effect to go from here to here, and then I just set it to 1/16, and then you can just count. Well, this is 1/16 snaps, so it's 32, so I will choose 32. But sometimes I'm not really sure how the number goes, so you can just experiment around, as I've said earlier. So now that you have understood what the 2-point Bezier does and what these two panels do, it's time to input your start and end to your effect. So what you need to do is open your editor again, just like the starter effect, and then you just choose the point that you want to be the start and end of your effect. So I will choose this to be the start, this to be the end, not this whole thing, because if you choose this whole thing, then this will be a speed up, speed up, speed up, speed up, speed up, and it will just not have the effect you want, unless that's actually what you want, I guess. So I'll just choose the start of my jump trill to the end of my jump trill, Ctrl C, open up editor, paste it into input. For this tab, it will be a little special. You'll always need to remember to click update bounds for the offset to be changed to the start point and the end point of the effect that you have chosen. So remember to always click update bounds before you do anything. Once you have clicked on update bounds, set your start anchor value, end anchor value, and the amount of Bezier steps that you want. Click on generate, Ctrl A, Ctrl C, open your editor. Remember to always Ctrl S to save first, open .osu, and then go to timing points, paste it wherever you want. Inside the timing point, please, Ctrl S to save the .osu, and then close it, and then exit, re-enter, and you should see that there's a effect. As you can see with my effect, it stays slow after it's finished, because 0.5 is my end anchor. So what you normally need to do is to change this last timing point back to 1. So I'll just change it back to 1, Ctrl S, and then see, it's back to the normal scroll speed. And that's how you do a slowdown effect, I suppose. If you want a speed up effect, just change the values here, maybe switch it around or whatever number that you want. So that's it for the TPB section. Alright, now that you know how to use the TPB tab, let's move on to the Normalizer tab, which will be the last tab that I'll cover. So what the Normalizer tab does is that it normalizes the speed changes caused by BPM changes in your map. For example, this is a custom map that I made, and it goes from 120 BPM to 240 BPM to 360 BPM. And then just check this out. Notice how the scroll speed changes when the BPM changes. The reason that happens is because every time when you have a BPM change in your map, the scroll speed increases and decreases depending on how much higher they are from your main BPM. And the way that you determine your main BPM of your map is that you go to the selection screen and you just look at the BPM number in the brackets. As you can see, it goes from 120 to 360, but it shows that the main BPM is 240. The way that they determine this is which BPM has the longest duration, which means if you're mapping a song with a lot of BPM changes, I would recommend you to go to the end of the song and then paste a note there. That way, the OSU editor actually measures the entire song and then determine which BPM has the longest duration. If you don't do this, maybe for example, you have only mapped this portion, and right now the BPM with the longest duration is 240 according to OSU, but that's only because so far I've only mapped until this part, and then now that the 360 BPM starts, it's only this small section. So if I go to the very end, paste a note there, save, you'll see that the main BPM becomes 360 instead of 240, because now the 360 BPM is this whole entire section of the song, so maybe the song is mainly 360 BPM. So if you're mapping a song with a lot of BPM changes, I will always recommend you to put a note at the very end so that the OSU editor will measure all of the BPMs and determine which one is your main BPM. So now that you understand how the Normalizer tab works, what you need to do is go to your OSU map, open timing setup panel, go to timing points. I would recommend going to timing points because it filters out the BPM changes only. If your maps have any SV points, it will become really jumbled up. So if you go to timing points, it will only show your BPM changes. You go Ctrl C and then open up your Reamber and then just paste it into the input and then generate, and then you'll see that there's a BPM list. What you need to do is select the BPM that is the main BPM of your song. For my case, it will be 360. So I'll just click on that, generate, Ctrl A, Ctrl C, go back to the map, Ctrl S, open .osu, over here, paste on the timing point section, Ctrl S on the .osu file, close it, and then go back to my map, and now the whole map should be on the normal scroll speed. See? It's on the normal scroll speed now. So that's how you use the normalizer. Now that you have learned how to use the Reamber program, you should be able to map your first SV map. But before you go, here are a few tips and tricks that will really help you on your SV mapping journey. One of the problems that a lot of people will have is that when their maps have thousands and thousands of SV points, they will want an easy way to maybe delete a certain timing point. So over here I have my terabyte connection map, and as you can see there's a lot of timing points over here. All of these green things are a timing point. Now let's say I want to delete this specific SV point. How do I do that? Well, the simplest way to do it is go over to the timing point, click on timing setup panel, and it should be the one that is selected over here. This is that timing point that my timeline was on, and if I want to delete it, I just click on delete. And that's how you edit a specific timing point out of maybe thousands of timing points that you might have in your map. Another question that some people might have is that they have a lot of these timing points, but they want to change the values of it. Now how do you do that? It's actually pretty simple. Now first of all, you go over to the specific SV point that you want first. And since this is a starter effect, I know that all of these are the same effects, just repeat it. So I'll just go on the timing panel, timing setup panel. You should see that there's a lot of 2.5, 0.5, 2.5, 0.5. That's because all of these are starters. So what you do is select, just change all of these 2.5s if you want. Maybe that's what you want to do, and then you can just change it here, whatever number that you want. So that's how you change multiple values at the same time. So maybe for example, this whole starter thing, I want to nerf it. I don't want to select the whole thing and then do the starter effect again. Then you can just manually type in the values on your own. And that's all for this video. If you enjoyed it, like, subscribe, all that shit. If you have any more extra questions that you might have, maybe ask them in the comment section, or you can go to my Twitch streams, twitch.tv/DarioEnjoyer. You can ask me in the chat. I'm always happy to talk to people on my Twitch chat, so come hang out, come chat, and that's it. See you guys in another video.